On the first frosty morning of winter, a raven arrives at Casterly Rock, carrying a letter for Tywin Lannister. There is no seal on the parchment, only a set of coded merchant's marks that Tywin recognizes at once. He breaks the wax and unfolds the message, unaware that it will change everything. The script is neat, precise, the hand of a maester, or perhaps a learned merchant who trades in more than goods and gold. But the message itself burns through his mind like wildfire through dry grass. Rumors from the north, whispers from Winterstown, tavern off from serving girls who once worked in Winterfell's kitchens during those chaotic months when Robert's War raged across the Seven Kingdoms. Small details, fragments of conversation, the kind of seemingly meaningless gossip that lesser minds dismiss, but that Tywin has spent decades learning to decode. Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, born in the Tower of Joy. Tywin sets the letter down with deliberate care, his green eyes fixed on those final words, as if staring at them might reveal some hidden meaning, some alternative interpretation that would render the implications less catastrophic. The Tower of Joy. He knows that place, knows its significance in ways that most of the realm has forgotten or chosen to ignore. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's final stronghold, where the last loyal Kingsguard made their stand, where Lyanna Stark breathed her last breath, where Ned Stark emerged forever changed with a bastard child in his arms. The morning sun climbs higher beyond the tall windows of his solar, casting long shadows across the maps and ledgers that cover his desk. But Tywin's attention has turned inward, backward, to those tumultuous days when crowns changed hands and ancient bloodlines faced extinction. He remembers Rhaegar's obsession with prophecy, with the prince that was promised, with his conviction that the dragon must have 3 heads. He remembers the crown prince's strange fixation on Lyanna Stark, the way his violet eyes would follow the young she-wolf at Harrenhal's great tournament, the public humiliation of his own wife when he crowned her queen of love and beauty. Most lords dismissed it as simple lust, the wandering eye of a prince who had tired of his Dornish bride. But Tywin understood the deeper currents that moved men like Rhaegar, the way prophecy and passion could intertwine until they became indistinguishable from madness itself. The Dragon Prince had not simply desired Lyanna Stark. He had believed her essential to his destiny, to the very survival of his bloodline, and perhaps the realm itself. His hands fold carefully over the letter, concealing its contents from any servant who might enter unannounced, while his mind works through the implications with the methodical precision of a master craftsman assembling a complex mechanism. If the whispers are true, if Jon Snow is not merely Ned Stark's bastard, but something far more dangerous, then the political landscape of Westeros shifts beneath their feet like sand in a storm. Robert Baratheon sits the Iron Throne because he destroyed House Targaryen, because he drove the dragon's blood from the realm in fire and exile. But blood has a way of persisting, of finding cracks in even the strongest foundations. Tywin rises from his chair and moves to the great window that overlooks the Western Sea, where merchant ships dot the horizon like distant stars. The view has remained unchanged for decades, constant as the turning of seasons, yet now even this familiar sight seems touched with uncertainty. His reflection stares back from the glass, the face that has terrified enemies and commanded respect throughout the Seven Kingdoms, but behind his eyes calculations race like quicksilver through a maze of possibilities and consequences. The serving girl's testimony, as recorded by his agent, speaks of strange dreams that plagued Jon Snow's childhood, of nights when he would wake screaming about dragons and flames, of a restlessness that seemed to pull him always southward despite his bastard's place in the frozen north. Such details might mean nothing in isolation, the fevered imaginings of a boy uncertain of his place in the world, But combined with the location of his birth and the timing of his arrival at Winterfell, they form a pattern that only a fool would ignore. He thinks of his own legacy, of the great golden lion that adorns his banners, and the debts that he has spent a lifetime ensuring are always paid. House Lannister has climbed to its current heights through careful planning, ruthless pragmatism, and an unwavering commitment to family above all else. Every decision, every alliance, every calculated cruelty has served the greater purpose of establishing his bloodline as one of the great powers of Westeros, capable of standing as equals to Starks and Baratheons, and any other house that might challenge their supremacy. But dragons change everything. Dragons rewrite the fundamental assumptions upon which all other calculations rest, because dragons represent not merely political power but something older, something that reaches back to the conquest itself, and the divine right of kings who ruled by fire and blood rather than mere birth and gold. If Jon Snow carries even a drop of Targaryen blood, if the rumors prove true, then he represents a threat that could unravel everything Tywin has built, not today or tomorrow, but in years to come when memory has faded and men begin to whisper once again of the rightful heirs to the Iron Throne. The letter crackles softly as he unfolds it once more, studying each carefully chosen word as if the parchment itself might yield additional secrets. His network of informants spans the Seven Kingdoms like an invisible web, from the brothels of King's Landing to the fighting pits of Meereen, but this particular intelligence comes from sources he has cultivated specifically for their access to the deepest secrets of the great houses, servants who have worked in the same souls for generations, maesters who correspond with colleagues across vast distances, merchants whose trade routes carry more than goods and gossip. The implications multiply in his mind like branches of an ancient tree, each possibility spawning new consequences that ripple outward through the complex web of Westerosi politics. Robert Baratheon, whose hatred for all things Targaryen burns with the fury of a man betrayed by love itself, would not hesitate to see Jon Snow dead if he learned the truth. But Robert's own reign grows increasingly fragile with each passing year, weakened by debt and debauchery, and the growing ambitions of those who circle his throne like vultures, waiting for the moment of greatest weakness. Cersei's children provide their own complications. Their golden hair and green eyes, a testament to secrets that Tywin himself has chosen to ignore for the greater good of his house's advancement. But if questions of legitimacy begin to swirl around the Iron Throne, if men start examining bloodlines and birth records too closely, then even carefully buried truths might claw their way back to the surface with consequences that could destroy everything he has worked to achieve. He moves to his desk and withdraws a clean sheet of parchment, his quill poised above the blank surface, as he considers his next moves, with the patience of a master chess player contemplating a board where every piece carries the weight of kingdoms. The response he crafts now will determine whether this information remains buried in rumor and speculation, or transforms into the kind of knowledge that topples dynasties and reshapes the very map of Westeros itself. The morning light continues its slow progression across his solar, illuminating the scattered papers and the careful notes he has begun to make. But Tywin's attention has already shifted to the larger game, to the delicate balance of power that keeps the realm stable and his own family secure at its heart. Somewhere in the north, Jon Snow trains with sword and shield, unaware that his very existence might represent the key to the most dangerous game ever played in Westeros. While far to the south in King's Landing, the hand of the king carefully seals his first letter with crimson wax and summons a trusted messenger to his solar. The man who enters moves with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to carrying secrets across great distances, his face unremarkable enough to pass unnoticed in any tavern from the Wall to Dorne. Tywin hands him the sealed parchment with instructions that require no written record, speaking in the low tones of a man who has orchestrated 1,000 clandestine operations throughout his long career. The messenger nods once and disappears into the maze of corridors that wind through the Red Keep, carrying with him the first thread in what will become an intricate web of investigation stretching across the Seven Kingdoms. The letter bears no identifying seal beyond the Lion of House Lannister, and its contents speak only of trade routes and merchant concerns to any casual observer who might intercept it along the King's Road. But the man who will receive it in the Shadow City beneath Sunspear understands the coded language that transforms mundane commercial correspondence into precise intelligence-gathering directives. He has served the Lannisters for over a decade, moving through Dornish markets and taverns with the easy familiarity of a born trader, while his true purpose remains hidden beneath layers of carefully constructed identity. Within the fortnight, he will begin asking questions about events that transpired nearly 2 decades ago, probing the memories of servants and soldiers who might recall unusual visitors to certain isolated towers in the Red Mountains. Tywin dispatches a second messenger before the sun reaches its zenith, this one bound for the Reach with instructions that will set another investigation in motion among the ruins where Rhaegar Targaryen made his final stand. The Tower of Joy stands empty now, its stones scattered by wind and weather. But stones can hold secrets as surely as men can carry them. Local smallfolk sometimes venture near the ruins to gather building materials or shelter their goats during sudden storms, and their casual observations over the years might reveal details that more formal inquiries would never uncover. A third letter follows the second by barely an hour, directed toward contacts in the Riverlands who can trace the movements of northern lords during those chaotic months when the realm teetered on the edge of revolution. The true genius of Tywin's approach lies not in the questions he asks, but in the questions he appears to avoid asking. His agents will inquire about grain shipments and troop movements, about the logistics of supplying armies in the field, and the challenges of maintaining communication across vast distances during wartime. They will express interest in the practical details of campaigning rather than the dramatic battles that bards sing about in taverns, and through this careful misdirection they will piece together a timeline that reveals far more than any direct interrogation ever could. When did Ned Stark depart for Dorne, and how many men rode with him? When did he return to the north, and what cargo did his party carry on the journey home? These are the kinds of details that fade from official histories, but linger in the memories of stable boys and innkeepers who noted the passage of great lords through their modest establishments. Tywin settles into his high-backed chair as the afternoon light slants through the narrow windows of his solar and begins the methodical process of reconstructing events that others would prefer to leave buried in the past. He spreads a detailed map of the Seven Kingdoms across his desk and marks the known locations where key figures appeared during those final months of Robert's rebellion, tracing possible routes with the tip of his finger, while his mind calculates distances and travel times with the precision of a quartermaster planning a campaign. Ned Stark claimed to have fathered Jon Snow during the early months of the war, but the chronology grows increasingly strained when examined against the documented movements of northern forces during that period. The Quiet Wolf had indeed been present at several crucial battles, his whereabouts well documented by multiple sources during the siege of Gulltown and the crossing of the Trident. But between these confirmed sightings lie gaps in the historical record, periods when even the most detailed accounts provide only vague references to his activities. Tywin notes these discrepancies with the satisfaction of a hunter who has found fresh tracks leading away from an obvious trail. Ned Stark was many things, But he was not a man given to casual dalliances with tavern wenches or fishermen's daughters during the chaos of armed rebellion. His marriage to Catelyn Tully had been a strategic alliance forged in the crucible of war, and his immediate departure for campaign duties left little opportunity for the kind of romantic entanglement that supposedly resulted in Jon Snow's conception. The window of possibility grows narrower still when Tywin factors in the testimony of those who knew Ned Stark best during those turbulent months. Robert Baratheon himself had spoken freely about his friend's somber mood throughout the rebellion, noting how the burden of leadership sat heavily upon shoulders that seemed better suited for the quiet halls of Winterfell than the bloody fields of war. This was not a man drunk on victory and conquest, prone to the kind of passionate indiscretions that produced bastard children. This was a man haunted by the necessity of violence, counting the cost of every battle in blood spilled and lives lost. Such a man might indeed return from war with a child in his arms, but the parentage of that child deserves closer examination than history has yet provided. The afternoon shadows lengthen as Tywin continues his careful analysis, cross-referencing dates and distances, with the methodical precision that has made him the most feared strategist in the Seven Kingdoms. His agents will not find definitive proof in a single afternoon's work, but proof is not what he seeks in these early stages of investigation. What he requires is pattern recognition, the ability to distinguish between genuine historical gaps and deliberate omissions in the record. Someone took great care to ensure that certain details about those final months of Robert's rebellion remained forever obscure, and that level of careful planning suggests secrets worth the tremendous effort required to maintain them across nearly 2 decades of changing political circumstances. The sun dips toward the western horizon as Tywin seals his final letter of the day, this one bound for Old Town, where the Citadel maintains archives that might contain references too obscure for most investigators to discover. Maesters keep detailed records of noble births and deaths, tracking bloodlines with the same precision they apply to astronomical observations or medical treatments. If Jon Snow carries Targaryen blood, traces of that heritage might be found in seemingly unrelated correspondence or genealogical studies compiled by scholars who never suspected the true significance of their work. The letter requests copies of specific documents related to succession law and inheritance customs, framed as research for potential legislative reforms that might strengthen royal authority in matters of disputed claims. Night falls over King's Landing as Tywin extinguishes the candles in his solar and prepares to join the evening's court festivities, his mind already turning toward the delicate task of gathering intelligence through casual conversations rather than formal investigation. Robert Baratheon himself represents the most valuable source of information about events surrounding Jon Snow's origins, but the king's knowledge comes filtered through layers of wine-soaked memory and deliberate ignorance of inconvenient truths. Tonight's feast will provide opportunities to guide the conversation toward those distant days, when young lords fought for the future of the realm, and perhaps Robert's boisterous recollections will reveal details that more sober reflection might have kept hidden. The great hall blazes with torchlight as lords and ladies gather for the evening meal, their conversations creating a constant murmur of political maneuvering disguised as social courtesy. Tywin takes his place at the high table with the measured dignity that befits the hand of the king, but his attention focuses primarily on Robert's animated discussion of hunting plans for the coming week. The king speaks with enthusiasm about the challenges of tracking stags through the Kingswood, and Tywin recognizes the opening he has been waiting for to steer the conversation toward other hunts, other quarries pursued during Robert's younger days, when the game was far more dangerous than forest. The wine flows freely as Robert's stories grow more expansive, his gestures broader as he describes the thrill of the chase through dense woodland, where shadows might hide friend or enemy alike. Tywin nods at appropriate intervals, offering just enough encouragement to keep the king's memories flowing, while carefully avoiding any appearance of pressing for specific information. The conversation drifts naturally from hunting to warfare, from present dangers to past conflicts that shaped the realm, and Robert's voice carries the weight of old victories and older losses as he speaks of companions who rode beside him during the rebellion that toppled the Targaryen dynasty. "Those were different days," Robert declares, raising his cup toward the assembled lords, when men knew their enemies and faced them with steel rather than whispers and schemes. Rhaegar thought he could steal away with Lyanna Stark and face no consequences. But the dragon learned that wolves bite back. The king's expression darkens momentarily before brightening again as wine washes away uncomfortable memories. "We tracked that bastard all the way to the Trident, and I gave him what he deserved with my warhammer." Tywin seizes upon the mention of Lyanna Stark with practiced subtlety, his voice carrying nothing more than polite interest, as he observes that the lady's death represented one of the war's greatest tragedies. Robert's face clouds immediately, and for a moment, the jovial mask slips to reveal the pain that still haunts him years after the conflict's end. The king speaks haltingly about arriving too late at the Tower of Joy, about finding Lyanna dying in that bed of blood while Ned Stark knelt beside her, about promises made and secrets kept that Robert admits he never fully understood. Ned never spoke much about what happened there. Robert continues, his words growing slurred as emotion and wine take their toll. 3 of the finest knights in the 7 kingdoms died protecting an empty tower, or so it seemed to me. But Ned carried something away from that place, something that changed him. The king pauses, seeming to struggle with memories that refuse to arrange themselves into clear patterns. Always wondered what promises she made him keep, what secrets died with her in that God-forsaken place. The information confirms details that Tywin had suspected but never heard spoken aloud by someone who witnessed the aftermath directly. Robert's account places Ned Stark alone with his dying sister in circumstances that would have allowed for private conversations, final requests, and the sort of desperate bargains that wars and loss create between the living and the dying. The timeline aligns perfectly with Jon Snow's birth, and Robert's own admission that Ned returned from the Tower of Joy, somehow changed, suggests that whatever burden Lyanna placed upon her brother's shoulders was significant enough to alter his fundamental character. Tywin excuses himself from the feast before the evening grows too late, claiming the need to review correspondence that arrived with the day's ravens. In the privacy of his solar, he spreads the reports from his agents across the heavy oak table and begins arranging the information into patterns that tell a story more complex than simple bastard birth. The Tower of Joy stood in the Red Mountains of Dorne, far from any battlefield or strategic location that would justify the presence of 3 Kingsguard knights, unless they were protecting something of enormous value to the Targaryen cause. Prince Rhaegar's personal guards died defending that isolated fortress, while their prince lay dead beside the Trident, their loyalty extending beyond death to whatever duty he had assigned them. No rational explanation exists for such devotion unless they were protecting someone whose life mattered more than their own, someone whose survival represented the continuation of their fallen prince's bloodline and the future of the dynasty they had served. The presence of a wet nurse in Starfall, documented in Lord Dane's household records, provides the final piece that transforms speculation into near certainty. Tywin rises from his chair and moves to the window that overlooks the Red Keep's practice yards, where even at this late hour, guards patrol their routes with disciplined precision. The moonlight illuminates the ancient stones that have witnessed the rise and fall of kings, the making and breaking of dynasties, the endless cycle of power that governs the realm. Jon Snow trains in these same yards each morning, his movements displaying the fluid grace of a born warrior despite his youth, his dark hair catching the light in ways that remind careful observers of other Targaryens who once walked these halls. The boy's features, viewed through this new lens of understanding, reveal themselves as a careful blend of Stark solemnity and Targaryen intensity. His eyes hold depths that seem older than his years, the same quality that marked Rhaegar as different from his siblings, more thoughtful and melancholic than the typical dragon princes. Jon's bearing carries natural authority despite his bastard status, the unconscious command presence that appears in those born to rule, even when they know nothing of their true heritage. Every interaction between Jon Snow and Robert Baratheon takes on new significance when viewed as encounters between a king and the secret son of the woman he loved and the prince he killed. Robert's obvious affection for Ned Stark's supposed bastard reflects more than simple fondness for his friend's child. It represents the complex emotions of a man unknowingly embracing the living symbol of his greatest victory and most profound loss. The king sees Lyanna in Jon's solemn expressions and Stark honor in his quiet dignity, never recognizing the dragon blood that flows beneath the wolf's careful disguise. Tywin understands that this knowledge represents either the greatest opportunity or the most dangerous threat his house has ever faced, depending entirely upon how skillfully he chooses to employ it. The revelation could shatter Robert's reign and destabilize the entire realm if handled clumsily, or it could provide the leverage necessary to secure Lannister dominance for generations, if applied with proper timing and precision. The boy himself remains unaware of his true parentage, which creates both advantages and complications that must be weighed carefully before any action can be taken. The strategic possibilities multiply as Tywin considers the various ways this information might be deployed to maximum effect. Jon Snow's true birth could serve as justification for eliminating a potential Targaryen claimant before he becomes dangerous, or it could provide the foundation for a calculated alliance that binds the secret prince to Lannister interests through mutual benefit rather than coercion. The choice between these approaches will determine not only Jon Snow's fate, but the future balance of power throughout the Seven Kingdoms, and Tywin recognizes that such momentous decisions cannot be rushed, despite the temptation to act swiftly before circumstances change. The reports scattered across his table contain enough evidence to convince any reasonable lord of Jon Snow's true parentage, but proof and political utility represent entirely different considerations in the Game of Thrones. Knowledge without proper application becomes mere curiosity, while information deployed at the right moment and in the right manner can reshape the realm according to the wielder's vision. Tywin folds the documents carefully and locks them in the iron strongbox that contains his most sensitive correspondence, knowing that the secret of Jon Snow's birth will remain hidden until the perfect moment arrives to reveal its true value through careful application rather than hasty disclosure. The Lord of Casterly Rock understands that confronting Ned Stark directly about such suspicions would yield little beyond outright denial and increased wariness, but a more subtle approach might extract the confirmation he seeks while maintaining the appearance of casual conversation between old enemies learning to coexist in an uneasy peace. The opportunity presents itself 3 days later when Robert summons his council to discuss the troubling reports from across the narrow sea regarding Daenerys Targaryen's growing influence among the Dothraki hordes. Tywin arrives early to the small council chamber and finds Ned Stark already seated at the table, studying a map of the free cities with the intense concentration that marks all his deliberations. The hand of the king looks older than his years, bearing the weight of decisions that would crush lesser men, and Tywin recognizes in that weathered face the same burden of secrets that he himself carries through every waking moment. "Lord Stark," Tywin says, settling into his chair with the measured dignity that commands attention without demanding it. "I trust Winterfell's affairs continue to prosper under your stewardship, despite the considerable demands of your current position." Ned glances up from the map, his gray eyes holding that familiar wariness that appears whenever Tywin addresses him directly. "The North endures, Lord Tywin, as it always has." The conversation might have ended there, another brief exchange of pleasantries between two powerful men who understand their mutual antagonism, but Tywin recognizes the opening and moves to exploit it with characteristic precision. Indeed, the North has produced remarkable leaders throughout its long history. Your father Brandon, for instance, showed great courage in his final days, though perhaps not the wisdom that might have served him better. Something shifts in Ned's expression, a tightening around the eyes that suggests old wounds stirred to fresh pain. "My brother died defending our sister's honor. I would not call that lacking in wisdom." Tywin nods slowly, allowing a moment of silence to settle between them before continuing his carefully planned assault. "Honor drives men to extraordinary actions, both noble and tragic. I have often wondered how far a truly honorable man might go to protect those he loves, what compromises he might accept to shield them from harm." The words hang in the air like a sword suspended by a thread, and Tywin watches Ned's reaction with the focused attention of a hunter studying his prey. The Lord of Winterfell's hands rest motionless on the table, but Tywin notices the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his breathing becomes marginally more controlled. These are the signs of a man confronting an uncomfortable truth, disguised as philosophical discussion. Honor without wisdom can destroy the very things a man seeks to protect. Ned replies carefully, his voice carrying the measured cadence of someone choosing each word with deliberate care. But compromise without honor destroys the man himself. Tywin leans back in his chair, recognizing both the deflection and the deeper truth contained within Ned's response. The Stark Lord speaks of compromise as something he understands intimately, not merely as an abstract concept, but as a lived experience that has shaped his character in fundamental ways. An interesting perspective. I wonder if you would maintain that position when faced with protecting a child whose very existence posed a threat to everything you hold dear. The reaction is subtle but unmistakable. Ned's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, and his eyes fix on a point just over Tywin's shoulder, rather than meeting his gaze directly. It is the response of a man who recognizes the specific nature of the hypothetical question being posed and finds it uncomfortably close to his own circumstances. "Children are innocent of their parents' choices," Ned says finally, his voice carrying a firmness that suggests deep personal conviction rather than casual opinion. No honorable man would punish them for circumstances beyond their control. Tywin allows himself the smallest of smiles, recognizing the confirmation he has been seeking hidden within Ned's seemingly general statement. The Lord of Winterfell speaks not of abstract principles, but of specific experiences that have tested his honor and forced him into the very compromises he claims to despise. Even when those circumstances might threaten the stability of kingdoms, even when protecting one innocent child might endanger countless others. The question strikes its target with devastating precision, and Tywin watches as Ned struggles to formulate a response that maintains his carefully constructed facade while acknowledging the impossible choices that define his current situation. The silence stretches between them, filled with unspoken recognition of the deadly game. being played beneath the surface of their seemingly philosophical discussion. "A man must live with his choices," Ned says eventually, his voice barely above a whisper. "The gods judge us all in the end, regardless of the justifications we construct for our actions." Tywin recognizes the words as both confession and warning, an acknowledgement that Ned Stark has indeed made the kind of compromise they have been discussing, while simultaneously suggesting that such knowledge comes with its own form of condemnation. The conversation has yielded exactly the confirmation Tywin sought, but it has also established that Ned Stark understands the precarious nature of his position and the potential consequences of discovery. "The gods are distant," Tywin replies softly, his words carrying the weight of decades spent navigating the treacherous currents of political survival. "Men must make their own judgments about what serves the greater good." The council chamber door opens before Ned can respond, admitting Robert Baratheon in all his boisterous glory, followed by the other members of the small council, filing in to discuss the Targaryen threat across the narrow sea. The moment of revelation passes into the mundane business of governance, but Tywin carries with him the knowledge that his suspicions about Jon Snow's parentage have been confirmed through careful observation of the one man who knows the truth. The seeds of doubt have been planted in Ned Stark's mind, and Tywin recognizes that the Lord of Winterfell will spend sleepless nights wondering how much his greatest enemy has discovered about his most dangerous secret. The game has entered a new phase, one where knowledge serves as both weapon and shield, and where the pressure might yield dividends far greater than any hasty confrontation could provide. As the council settles into their familiar roles and Robert begins his customary complaints about the burdens of kingship, Tywin finds himself studying Ned Stark with renewed interest, recognizing that the man who raised Jon Snow as his bastard son now understands that his secret may no longer be secure. The irony strikes Tywin with crystalline clarity as Robert's voice booms across the chamber, regaling the council with tales of his latest hunt, while completely oblivious to the fact that his greatest nightmare has been walking the halls of Winterfell for 16 years. A living dragon, raised by wolves, trained in the arts of war and honor by the very man who helped Robert claim his throne by ending the Targaryen dynasty. The symmetry appeals to Tywin's sense of poetic justice, though he recognizes that symmetry means nothing without leverage. Tywin settles into his chair at the council table, his mind already racing through the possibilities this knowledge presents. Jon Snow's true parentage represents more than mere scandal or blackmail material against Ned Stark. It represents a potential weapon of unimaginable power, one that could reshape the political landscape of Westeros, depending on how skillfully it is wielded. The boy himself remains ignorant of his heritage, believing himself to be nothing more than Ned Stark's bastard son, but ignorance can be cured. Revelation can be timed. Truth can be deployed like a siege engine, positioned for maximum impact when the moment demands it. As Varys glides into the chamber with his characteristic whispered apologies for tardiness, Tywin finds himself reassessing the spider's network of informants. Does the eunuch know? Has word of Jon Snow's true parentage somehow reached the master of whisperers through channels unknown? Tywin studies Varys's pale, soft features as the man takes his seat, searching for any sign that this particular secret has found its way into those carefully manicured hands. The absence of any meaningful glance or subtle acknowledgement suggests that this knowledge remains confined to a remarkably small circle, making it all the more valuable. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffles into the chamber, his chains clinking softly as he settles his ancient bones into his customary position. The old man's loyalties have always aligned with House Lannister when circumstances demanded, and Tywin briefly considers the wisdom of expanding the circle of knowledge to include the Grand Maester's expertise. But wisdom counsels patience. The fewer people who know, the more valuable the secret remains. Pycelle's loose tongue and tendency toward verbose explanations would make him a liability rather than an asset in this particular matter. Robert's attention turns to the reports from across the narrow sea, his voice taking on the familiar edge it always carries when discussing the surviving Targaryens. "The beggar king is dead," he announces with satisfaction, though the news is hardly fresh to those who pay attention to such matters. Khal Drogo's Khaleesi made sure of that. Crown of molten gold, they say. Fitting end for a dragon. The king's laughter fills the chamber, but Tywin notes how Ned Stark's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly at the mention of Targaryen deaths, another confirmation of what Tywin already knows to be true. The discussion turns to Daenerys Targaryen and her marriage to the Dothraki Khal, with Lord Renly suggesting that barbaric horsemen pose no real threat to the Seven Kingdoms. Stannis disagrees, his grinding voice cutting through his younger brother's dismissiveness. "The girl is still Aerys's daughter, Sir," Stannis declares. Dragons have a way of growing teeth when you least expect it. Tywin watches Ned Stark's reaction to this exchange, noting how the Lord of Winterfell's knuckles whiten as his hands rest on the table. The man who raised one dragon is listening to plans for killing another, and the internal conflict plays across his features for those trained to read such signs. The strategic implications multiply in Tywin's mind like branches growing from a carefully planted tree. If Daenerys Targaryen somehow manages to return to Westeros with an army at her back, Jon Snow's existence becomes leverage against multiple threats. The realm would face not one Targaryen claimant, but potentially two. Though only a handful of people know about the second, the boy could be revealed as a rival claimant to undermine Daenerys' support among those who prefer male inheritance. Alternatively, he could be positioned as an ally to strengthen her claim, depending on which arrangement better serves Lannister interests. The flexibility of options appeals to Tywin's strategic sensibilities. But the immediate applications prove even more intriguing. Jon Snow's true parentage represents a sword hanging over Ned Stark's head, one that could be dropped at any moment to devastating effect. The Honorable Lord of Winterfell has built his entire reputation on truth and justice, yet he has perpetrated one of the greatest lies in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. The revelation would destroy him politically, socially, and personally. His wife would discover that she has been tormenting an innocent boy who carries the blood of kings. His children would learn that their supposed half-brother outranks them all in the fundamental hierarchy of Westeros. The North would fracture as lords choose between loyalty to House Stark and fascination with a living dragon in their midst. Tywin's fingers drum silently against the table as Robert continues his diatribe against Targaryen pretenders, completely unaware that he sits in council with the man who preserved his greatest enemy's bloodline. The king's paranoia about dragons stems from his deep understanding that legitimacy matters in Westeros, that blood claims carry weight even when backed by minimal force. Robert fears Targaryen restoration not because Daenerys commands vast armies, but because she represents an alternative to his rule that some lords might find preferable. Jon Snow represents that same threat multiplied because he combines Targaryen blood with northern upbringing and Stark loyalties that could be redirected under the right circumstances. The conversation shifts to taxation and trade disputes, mundane matters that normally command Tywin's full attention. But today, his mind remains focused on the larger game, the deeper strategies that such revelations make possible. House Lannister has always survived through superior information and strategic thinking. This knowledge about Jon Snow represents perhaps the most significant intelligence advantage any house has possessed in generations. The question becomes not whether to use it, but when and how to extract maximum benefit. Ned Stark glances across the table, meeting Tywin's gaze for just a moment before looking away. In that brief exchange, Tywin sees confirmation of his suspicions. Stark knows that Tywin suspects something. The Lord of Winterfell will spend the coming weeks wondering how much has been discovered, how much evidence exists, how many people might know his secret. That uncertainty will eat at him like poison, affecting his judgment and weakening his position in countless subtle ways. Fear of exposure makes men careless. Carelessness creates opportunities for those patient enough to wait for them. The council session draws toward its conclusion, with Robert eager to return to whatever diversions await him in the Red Keep's pleasure gardens. As the king rises from his chair, already mentally departed from the chamber, Tywin finds himself calculating the timeline for his next moves. The knowledge must be verified through additional sources. Other witnesses must be identified and carefully approached. The boy himself must be studied more closely, evaluated for his potential value as either ally or enemy. Most importantly, contingency plans must be developed for multiple scenarios, because in the Game of Thrones, preparation separates victors from casualties. Ned Stark gathers his papers with hands that tremble almost imperceptibly, the weight of 16 years of deception suddenly feeling heavier under Tywin's watchful gaze. The Lord of Winterfell understands that his secret may have been discovered, but he cannot know the full extent of what Tywin plans to do with that knowledge. The uncertainty will work in Tywin's favor, keeping Stark off balance while plans develop in the shadows. As the council members begin filing out of the chamber, Tywin remains seated, his mind already racing ahead to the conversations he must have with Cersei, the letters he must write to his agents in the north, the careful inquiries that must be made about Jon Snow's activities and associations. The boy trains in the yards of Winterfell, unaware that his every sword stroke and tactical decision now carries implications far beyond personal improvement. He thinks himself a bastard, preparing for a life of service to his true-born siblings. He has no idea that he might someday find himself at the center of conflicts that could reshape the Seven Kingdoms. The chamber empties except for Tywin, who sits in contemplative silence as late afternoon sunlight streams through the tall windows. Somewhere in the north, Jon Snow tends to his duties as the bastard son of Winterfell, completely ignorant of the royal blood that flows through his veins and the strategic value that heritage represents. The boy's ignorance protects him for now, but ignorance has an unfortunate tendency to dissolve when powerful men decide that revelation serves their interests, and Tywin Lannister has never been a man to let sleeping dragons lie undisturbed when they might serve his purposes. 3 days after the small council meetings, a raven arrives at Winterfell bearing the hand seal and a message that sends ripples of unease through Ned Stark's soul. The letter speaks of matters requiring urgent discussion, of delicate concerns that demand privacy, and of a meeting that must take place away from the prying eyes of King's Landing. Ned reads the letter twice, his weathered hands tightening around the parchment as he absorbs the careful phrasing and veiled implications. Tywin requests a meeting at a small holdfast halfway between the capital and Winterfell, suggesting they bring minimal escorts and maintain absolute discretion. The tone is cordial but firm, carrying the unmistakable weight of a man who rarely makes requests that are truly optional. Maester Luwin hovers nearby, his chain jangling softly as he pretends to organize scrolls, while clearly hoping for some explanation of the hand's unusual correspondence. "Prepare for travel," Ned tells him quietly, folding the letter and placing it carefully in his desk drawer. "We ride south in 2 days. Small party, only Jory and 6 guards will suffice." The Maester nods, though his eyes betray curiosity about the sudden journey and the mysterious urgency that has drawn his lord away from Winterfell's pressing concerns. Winter approaches, harvests require oversight, and the daily governance of the North cannot simply pause for cryptic summons from King's Landing. Yet Ned recognizes something in Tywin's letter that suggests delay might prove more costly than inconvenience. The holdfast chosen for their meetings sits like a weathered stone in the rolling countryside between kingdoms, its modest walls and simple tower speaking of minor lords and forgotten histories. When Ned arrives with his small escort, he finds Tywin already waiting in the main hall, seated at a simple wooden table, with wine and bread arranged before him. The hand of the king appears relaxed, almost casual, but his pale green eyes is nothing as they catalog every detail of Ned's arrival and demeanor. "Lord Stark," Tywin says, rising with the measured courtesy that characterizes all his public interactions. "Thank you for making this journey. I trust the roads treated you kindly." His tone carries the easy confidence of a man conducting business rather than the formal stiffness of court protocol, and Ned finds himself immediately wary of this apparent informality. In his experience, Tywin Lannister's casual moments often prove the most dangerous. They settle across from each other at the simple table, and Tywin pours wine with his own hands rather than summoning servants. The gesture speaks of privacy taken to unusual extremes, and Ned accepts the cup while studying his host's face for any hint of his intentions. The hand appears in no hurry to reveal his purpose, instead commenting on the quality of the vintage and the pleasant autumn weather, as if this were merely a social visit between old adversaries who have found themselves on the same side of political necessity. "You wonder why I asked you here," Tywin says eventually, his fingers tracing the rim of his wine cup. "Away from court, away from advisors and spies and all the listening ears that make honest conversation impossible in the capital. The matter I wish to discuss requires absolute discretion, Lord Stark. The sort of discretion that becomes more precious than gold when certain truths come to light." His eyes never leave Ned's face as he speaks, watching for any flicker of recognition or alarm that might confirm his suspicions. Ned maintains his composure, though his heart begins to beat faster as the implications of Tywin's words settle into his mind. The hand continues speaking in that same measured tone, mentioning the complexity of governing in times of transition, the delicate balance required to maintain stability when unexpected revelations threaten established order. Each phrase feels carefully chosen, designed to probe and test without committing to accusations that cannot be withdrawn. "I have always admired your reputation for honor, Lord Stark," Tywin says, leaning back in his chair with the satisfaction of a man who has successfully maneuvered his opponent into exactly the position he desired. "Honor that led you to make certain promises, to keep certain secrets, to protect certain individuals regardless of personal cost. Such dedication commands respect, even from those who might question the wisdom of particular choices." The words hang in the air between them, like a blade suspended by the finest thread, ready to fall at any moment. There are times when honor and pragmatism must find common ground. Tywin continues, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "When the protection of one secret serves the interests of multiple parties, creating opportunities for mutual benefit rather than mutual destruction, I believe we have reached such a moment, Lord Stark. Your young bastard has grown into quite the accomplished swordsman, I hear. Quite accomplished indeed for a boy of such supposedly common birth." The words strike Ned like physical blows, though he manages to keep his expression neutral through years of practice in concealing dangerous emotions. Tywin knows. The realization crashes through his mind with the force of an avalanche, bringing with it a cascade of fears and calculations about exposure, about Jon's safety, about the complex web of lies and half-truths that have protected the boy since birth. His hand tightens imperceptibly around his wine cup as he meets Tywin's steady gaze. "I have no idea what you mean to suggest," Ned says carefully. his voice carrying the formal tone he reserves for moments when words carry life or death implications. But even as he speaks the denial, he recognizes its futility against the calculating intelligence seated across from him. Tywin's slight smile suggests he expected exactly this response and finds it more confirmation than contradiction. "Of course you don't," Tywin replies, with the sort of pleasant agreeability that makes his words even more threatening. "Just as I'm sure you have no knowledge of certain events that occurred at the Tower of Joy, or certain promises made to dying sisters, or certain arrangements that might explain why Robert Baratheon's friend would raise a bastard with such obvious care and attention. These matters remain mysteries to us both, naturally. Mysteries that need never be solved if more pressing concerns can be addressed through cooperation rather than Ned's silence stretches between them like a blade held at the throat, sharp and fragile and dangerous to disturb. The unfinished threat hangs in the air alongside the scent of wine and the distant sounds of servants moving through the castle's corridors. Both men understand that this moment represents a turning point, though neither yet knows toward what destination the path will lead. Tywin sets down his cup with deliberate precision, the soft click of metal against wood marking time in a conversation where every gesture carries weight. "There are practical considerations," he says, his voice taking on the measured cadence of a man accustomed to weighing gold against lives. "Should certain bloodlines prove more legitimate than previously supposed, the political landscape of Westeros would shift dramatically. Old alliances would require reevaluation. New partnerships might become necessary." The words send a chill through Ned that has nothing to do with the northern wind rattling the windows. He recognizes the tone, has heard it used before when Tywin speaks of shifting loyalties and calculated betrayals. "You would consider supporting a Targaryen restoration?" The question emerges before Ned can stop it, disbelief overriding caution. Tywin's expression remains unchanged, but something flickers behind his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at finding himself contemplating precisely that possibility. "I would consider supporting whatever arrangement best serves the interests of House Lannister and the stability of the realm. If certain truths came to light, if certain claims proved valid, if certain young men demonstrated the wisdom to surround themselves with experienced advisors." He lets the sentence trail away, allowing its implications to settle. The very thought should appall him. The Targaryens represent everything his family spent years destroying. His father's humiliation at their hands, the burning of Tywin's cousins at Tarbeck Hall, the gradual erosion of Lannister prestige under the Mad King's rule. All of it culminating in the moment when he chose to side with Robert rather than defend the dynasty his house had served for generations. Yet now, faced with the possibility of another Targaryen heir, one raised by honorable Ned Stark rather than surrounded by sycophants and madmen, the calculation shifts. "My children would find such a change difficult to accept," Tywin says slowly, as though testing the words against reality. Cersei's reaction alone would be volcanic. She has built her entire identity around her position as Robert's queen, around the power that marriage brought to their house. Jaime, bound to the crown by his Kingsguard, vows but loyal primarily to his sister, would follow wherever she led. Both of them have invested too much in the current order to welcome its destruction. But children, even grown children, must sometimes accept their father's wisdom in matters beyond their understanding. Tywin has spent decades positioning House Lannister at the center of Westerosi power. If that center shifts, if legitimacy flows toward a different source, then survival demands adaptation rather than stubborn adherence to failing strategies. "There would need to be guarantees," he continues, his mind already working through the mechanics of such an impossible transformation. "Pardons for past loyalties, assurances regarding existing arrangements, a smooth transition that preserves stability rather than encouraging chaos. The realm has seen enough warfare. Ned watches this evolution with growing unease. The man across from him has just outlined, in the span of minutes, a complete reversal of everything House Lannister has represented for nearly 2 decades. Yet Tywin speaks of it with the same dispassionate calculation he might use to discuss grain shipments or tax collection. "You would abandon Robert?" "I would serve the rightful king," Tywin corrects. "As I have always done. As my father did before me and his father before him, loyalty to the crown transcends loyalty to individuals who happen to wear it temporarily." The rationalization comes easily, practiced in its delivery, despite being formulated only moments before. Tywin has spent his life justifying necessary betrayals as higher loyalties. Abandoning Aerys for Robert became service to the realm's stability. Now abandoning Robert for Jon becomes service to legitimate succession. The crown endures, the men who wear it pass away, but even as he speaks these words, Tywin recognizes their incomplete truth. This decision, should it come to pass, would represent something unprecedented in his long career. Not merely changing sides in an existing conflict, but actively working to destabilize the very order he helped create. The risk extends beyond political calculation into something approaching madness. Unless the calculation proves correct, unless Jon Snow, Jon Targaryen, possesses the qualities necessary to rule effectively, unless the transition can be managed smoothly enough to prevent widespread rebellion, unless the benefits outweigh the catastrophic risks. "I would need to know more," Tywin says finally, "about the boy's character, his capabilities, his willingness to listen to counsel, the strength of his claim when subjected to scrutiny, the likelihood that other lords would accept such a revelation." Each requirement represents another layer of complexity, another opportunity for disaster. Yet they also represent possibilities for control, for shaping events rather than merely reacting to them. If House Lannister manages this transition successfully, if they position themselves as kingmakers rather than kingbreakers, the rewards could exceed anything achieved under Robert's rule. There are others who would need to be approached carefully, Tywin continues, his voice dropping as he considers the delicate work ahead. Lords who might support a Targaryen restoration if properly motivated. Dorne, obviously, still harbors grievances against Robert and the Lannisters both. The Tyrells might be persuaded if sufficient incentives were offered. Even some northern houses might prefer a king raised by Ned Stark to one they consider a usurper. The map of Westeros reshapes itself in his mind as he speaks. Old enemies becoming allies, old friends becoming obstacles. The very fluidity of the transformation both terrifies and excites him. Politics at this level becomes an art form, requiring not just intelligence, but courage bordering on recklessness. Ned listens to this casual discussion of treason with mounting alarm. The speed with which Tywin adapts to new realities, the ease with which he abandons old loyalties for new advantages, serves as a stark reminder of why so many fear House Lannister's ambitions. Yet the same adaptability that makes Tywin dangerous could also make him invaluable if events unfold, as both men now suspect they might.
"I have not confirmed anything,"
Ned says quietly, a last attempt to maintain some distance from these treacherous speculations. Tywin inclines his head slightly, accepting the formal denial while dismissing its practical relevance. "Of course not. We speak only in hypotheticals. Theoretical arrangements that might prove beneficial should certain unlikely circumstances arise. Nothing more. But both men understand that theories, once spoken aloud between such careful listeners, begin their transformation into plans. The conversation has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Whatever happens next, the possibility has been acknowledged. The calculations begun, the first tentative steps taken toward a future neither had imagined only hours before. The weight of that recognition settles over them like a shroud as Tywin reaches again for his wine, his mind already turning to the impossibly delicate work of laying groundwork for a betrayal that might never come, while maintaining plausible denial, should it prove necessary. The boy at Winterfell continues his training, unaware that his very existence has just become the subject of calculations that stretch across the 7 kingdoms, touching lords who have never seen his face, and influencing decisions made in chambers where his name has never been spoken. Ned Stark rides north through the gathering dusk, his horse's hooves marking a steady rhythm against the king's road, while his thoughts turn like mill wheels, grinding through possibilities that taste of ash and betrayal. Each mile closer to Winterfell brings the weight of his conversation with Tywin into sharper focus, transforming theoretical discussions into practical realities that demand immediate consideration. The Lord of Winterfell has spent 16 years perfecting the art of protective silence, building walls of a deliberate ignorance around Jon Snow that have served as both shield and prison. Now those walls feel less like fortification and more like kindling, ready to burst into flame at the first spark of discovery. He thinks of Jon in the training yard, sword in hand, moving with a grace that speaks of Targaryen blood as clearly as any written confession, and wonders how many others have noticed what he has worked so desperately to obscure. Maester Luwin awaits him in the solar when he returns, parchments spread across the oak table like fallen leaves, each one bearing news from corners of the realm where whispers carry more weight than gold. "My lord," the old man says, rising with the careful movements of age and long service, "ravens have brought word from King's Landing." The king grows restless. There is talk of another royal progress, perhaps to the north. The words hang in the air between them, innocent enough on the surface, but laden with implications that make Ned's stomach clench with familiar dread. Robert's last visit brought Jon to dangerous prominence, placed him before eyes that had already begun to wonder and speculate. "When?" Ned asks, settling into his chair with movements that feel suddenly heavy, as if the conversation with Tywin has added physical weight to his bones. Luwin consults his papers with scholarly precision, though both men know the answer carries implications far beyond mere scheduling. "The letter suggests spring, my lord, after the worst of winter has passed but before the heat of summer makes travel unpleasant for his grace." Spring means months of preparation, months of worry, months of calculating how to keep Jon safely distant from royal attention without creating suspicion through obvious absence. The solar grows quiet, except for the crackling of logs in the great hearth, flames dancing shadows across stone walls that have witnessed generations of Stark decisions, some wise, some foolish, all carrying consequences that ripple forward through time like stones thrown into still water. Ned stares into the fire and sees possibilities burning bright as dragon flame, each one demanding choices he has spent years avoiding. He could send Jon away now before questions arise and suspicions harden into certainty. A ship to the free cities, perhaps, or service with some distant lord who asks few questions and values sword skill over bloodlines. "Maester," he says slowly, each word carefully weighed against the others. "What news do you hear from Old Town? Are there positions available for young men seeking to expand their education?" The question emerges wrapped in casual curiosity, but Luwin's sharp eyes miss nothing. The old man has served House Stark too long to mistake idle inquiry for genuine disinterest. "Several, my lord. The Citadel always has need of promising students, particularly those who show aptitude with languages or histories. There are also trading opportunities with the Summer Isles, positions that would suit a young man seeking adventure and experience far from Westeros." The conversation continues in this careful dance of suggestion and implication, each man understanding more than either explicitly states. Ned finds himself walking a razor's edge between protective action and suspicious preparation, knowing that too much haste will raise questions, while too little preparation might prove fatal. He thinks of Lyanna's fevered whispers, her dying plea to keep Jon safe, and wonders if safety now requires breaking the promise that has defined his honor for 16 years. In his chambers that night, Ned pulls out parchment and ink, his hand hovering over blank pages as he wrestles with words that feel like betrayal, regardless of how he arranges them. A letter to Jon would be simple enough, explaining opportunities for advancement that require immediate departure, painting adventure and learning in colors bright enough to overcome any reluctance to leave Winterfell's familiar walls. But Jon is no longer a child to be distracted by tales of distant wonders. He has grown into a man who asks questions and expects honest answers, who might see through deception with eyes that hold too much of his father's clarity. The candle burns lower as Ned contemplates a different path, one that runs counter to every instinct developed through 16 years of careful silence. Perhaps the truth, carefully shared, might serve Jon better than continued ignorance. Perhaps knowing his heritage would help him understand the dangers that surround him, make him cautious in ways that blind innocence never could. But truth is a sword without a hilt, as likely to cut the wielder as any enemy, and once drawn, it cannot be sheathed again. He sets down the quill and moves to the window, looking out over Winterfell's ancient towers where his bastard son sleeps peacefully, unaware that his very existence has become a problem requiring solution. The night air carries the scent of snow and pine, familiar comforts that feel suddenly fragile in the face of southern ambitions and royal attention. Ned has always prided himself on choosing honor over expedience, but now he wonders if honor might demand a different kind of courage, the willingness to shatter comfortable lies in service of harder truths. Morning will bring new ravens, new reports, new pressures that will not pause for his uncertainty. The game moves forward whether he chooses to play or not, and Jon Snow remains a piece on a board where the stakes grow higher with each passing day. Ned Stark closes his eyes and searches for wisdom in the darkness, knowing that his next decision might determine whether his sister's son lives to see another winter, and whether the promise made beside a bed of blood and roses will prove to be salvation or doom itself, as the whispers he most feared begin to spread through the shadowed corridors of power, like wildfire consuming dry timber. In King's Landing, 3 days after Tywin's letter reaches Winterfell, Varys adjusts his silk slippers and glides through the Red Keep's lower passages, where servants huddle around kitchen fires and speak in voices barely above breath. The spider has cultivated these sources for decades, understanding that power flows not just through great lords and their proclamations, but through washerwomen and stable boys whose ears catch fragments of conversation never intended for common hearing. Tonight, he pauses behind a stone pillar as 2 kitchen maids scrub pots with unusual vigor, their whispered words carrying across the empty hall like smoke drifting from dying embers. "My cousin serves at Winterfell," the younger girl murmurs, glancing around as if the very stones might carry tales. "Says there's been ravens flying thick as snow, all bearing the lion of Casterly Rock." Her companion snorts softly. "Ravens fly every day, girl. That's what ravens do." "Not like this." She says Lord Stark paces his solar like a caged wolf, and his lady wife won't speak of their bastard boy. Strange thing, that, when she's never liked the lad well enough to speak kindly anyway. Varys shifts in the shadows, his pale hands folded within his sleeves, as he absorbs this morsel of intelligence. Servants' gossip often proves more valuable than the formal reports his little birds bring from lords' chambers. For servants see the unguarded moments when masks slip and careful facades crack under pressure, The mention of Jon Snow in connection with House Lannister correspondence creates patterns that his trained mind immediately begins to trace, following threads of possibility through the complex web of relationships that bind the great houses together in chains of obligation and enmity. The younger maid continues her tale with growing confidence. She heard tell from the maester's assistant that one letter bore more than just words, some kind of sealed document, thick as a lord's finger and yellow with age. Made Lord Stark go white as fresh snow when he saw it. Documents, her companion muses, setting down her scrubbing brush. Documents that old usually mean marriages or births or deaths, things that matter to bloodlines. Varys glides away before the conversation can turn to speculation about which bloodlines might concern themselves with bastards. But the seed has been planted in fertile ground. By morning, variations of this tale will spread through 3 more kitchens, 2 stables, and at least 1 brothel where serving girls carry gossip along with wine. The spider understands how information flows through King's Landing, like water finding cracks in stone, and he knows that once certain words are spoken aloud, they take on lives of their own that no power can fully control. Meanwhile, in his solar high above the castle courtyard, Tywin Lannister receives his own intelligence through more direct channels as his most trusted agents report developments that confirm his growing suspicions about how quickly sensitive information can escape the bounds of discretion. Lord Qyburn enters without ceremony, his soft footsteps barely audible on the stone floor as he approaches the massive oak desk where ledgers and correspondence create careful piles of organized authority. "My lord," Qyburn begins, his voice carrying the same measured tone he might use to discuss the weather. "There are stirrings in the city that suggest certain names are being mentioned in contexts that were not intended for common ears." Tywin does not look up from the parchment he studies, though his fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around the quill. "Which names?" "Jon Snow, House Targaryen, the Tower of Joy." Qyburn pauses, allowing each word to settle before continuing. The conversations remain fragmented, scattered among different groups who have not yet connected their separate pieces of information into a complete picture, but the pattern suggests that someone with access to multiple sources is beginning to assemble details that were meant to remain buried. How long before these fragments become something more dangerous? Days, perhaps a fortnight if we are fortunate. The city has a way of taking whispers and transforming them into certainties, particularly when those whispers concern bastards who might not be bastards at all. Tywin sets down his quill and turns toward the narrow window that overlooks the sprawling chaos of King's Landing, where hundreds of thousands of souls go about their daily lives, unaware that the very foundations of royal legitimacy might be shifting beneath their feet. The game he has played so carefully, moving pieces with surgical precision while maintaining the appearance of normal court routine, now threatens to escape his control through the simple fact that secrets shared between 2 parties inevitably become known to 3, then 4, then countless others whose loyalties and discretions cannot be guaranteed. "Send word to Lord Mathis Rowan," he says finally, his voice carrying the weight of decision. "Arrange a private meeting. Tell him I have a proposal that might interest House Rowan's long-term prospects in the coming changes to the realm's stability." Qyburn nods, understanding that Tywin has chosen to accelerate his timeline rather than risk losing control of the revelation entirely. Lord Rowan commands significant influence. In the Reach holds lands that border both loyalist and potentially rebellious territories, and most importantly, has always demonstrated the kind of practical wisdom that values stability over sentiment when great changes reshape the political landscape. The letters Tywin composes over the next several hours are masterworks of careful suggestion, each one tailored to appeal to the specific interests and concerns of lords, whose support will prove essential if Jon Snow's true parentage becomes public knowledge. To Lord Randall Tarly, he writes of the need for strong military leadership during periods of potential succession crisis. To Baxter Redwine, he hints at expanded trading opportunities that might follow a more stable resolution of disputed claims. To Mathis Rowan himself, he offers partnership in managing the delicate transition that must occur when bastards become princes. And the established order requires careful reconstruction rather than violent overthrow. Each letter carries the same underlying message, though phrased with diplomatic subtlety, that allows each recipient to draw their own conclusions about what Tywin Lannister might know and what he might be prepared to do with that knowledge. The Old Lion understands that revelation without support creates chaos, but revelation backed by sufficient force and political alliance can become transformation that serves the interests of all involved parties, while eliminating the uncertainties that threaten everyone's position. As midnight approaches and the last letter receives its seal, Tywin allows himself a moment of cold satisfaction at the elegant simplicity of his solution. Rather than fighting the spread of dangerous information, he will harness it, shape it, and ultimately use it to strengthen rather than weaken his family's position in the realm's hierarchy. The bastard of Winterfell will become a prince, but a prince whose claim flows through Lannister recognition and Lannister protection, binding the last Targaryen heir to the very house that destroyed his father's dynasty. The ravens depart Casterly Rock before dawn, carrying their messages toward lords whose responses will determine whether Jon Snow's transformation occurs through careful political management or through the kind of violent upheaval that tears kingdoms apart at their foundations. And as those black wings disappear into the gray morning sky, Tywin knows that the next phase of his campaign has begun in earnest. Though he cannot yet see all the consequences that his machinations will unleash across the political landscape of Westeros, where information travels faster than armies, but proves far more dangerous to contain once released into the wrong hands or misinterpreted by ambitious lords seeking advantage. The Solar at Riverrun receives its raven 3 days after the departure from Casterly Rock, and Lord Edmure Tully breaks the seal with hands that tremble slightly as he recognizes the Lannister sigil pressed into red wax. His uncle Brynden stands beside the great window, overlooking the rushing waters of the Red Fork, ostensibly watching the dawn mist rise from the river, but actually listening with a careful attention that has kept him alive through decades of warfare and political maneuvering. The message unfolds across parchment that bears the weight of careful composition, each word chosen for maximum impact while maintaining the appearance of reasonable discourse between allies. Rather than the calculated manipulation it represents. "The Old Lion sends his regards," Edmure says slowly, his voice carrying the cautious tone of a man who has learned through bitter experience that Lannister correspondence rarely brings simple news. He wishes to discuss a matter of mutual interest regarding the legitimacy of certain claimants and the stability of the realm. The euphemistic language does not disguise the underlying message, and Brynden turns from his contemplation of the river with the sharp attention of a military commander recognizing the opening moves of a complex campaign. What does he want in exchange for this information? The Blackfish asks, because men who have dealt with Tywin Lannister understand that his generosity always comes with a price carefully calculated to advance his own interests. The letter provides that answer in terms that manage to sound both reasonable and ominous, promising rewards for cooperation and suggesting consequences for those who might choose to act independently with knowledge that could destabilize the careful balance of power that keeps the Seven Kingdoms from descending into chaos. In the Godswood of Winterfell, where the ancient weirwood stands sentinel over oaths spoken and secrets kept, Catelyn Stark receives her own message through different channels, carried not by Raven, but by a merchant whose casual conversation masks the delivery of intelligence that arrives, wrapped in seemingly innocent observations about trade routes and weather patterns. The coded language speaks of discoveries made and alliances offered, of bastards whose true names might reshape the political map of Westeros if properly managed by those wise enough to see opportunity rather than threat in revelations that could either elevate or destroy, depending on how carefully they are handled. "Jon Snow," she whispers to herself in the empty Godswood, speaking the name that has haunted her marriage, like a ghost of her husband's supposed infidelity, though the truth suggested in these carefully crafted hints points toward a deception far more complex than simple adultery. The message does not state its implication as directly, but the pattern of information creates a picture that explains much while demanding even more in terms of political repositioning and strategic alliance. Lord Stannis Baratheon receives his correspondence at Dragonstone, where the carved dragons that decorate every surface seem to watch with renewed interest as he reads words that speak of justice and legitimacy in terms that resonate with his own unwavering belief in rightful succession. The irony does not escape him that Tywin Lannister, architect of his brother Robert's rebellion's victory, now offers intelligence that could fundamentally alter the nature of claims and counterclaims that have shaped the realm's politics for nearly 2 decades. A Targaryen heir raised as a Stark bastard, Davos observes quietly, reading over his king's shoulder with the careful attention he brings to all matters that might affect his lord's pursuit of what he considers his rightful throne. The implications extend beyond simple legitimacy into questions of alliance and support that could reshape the entire conflict. His words carry the weight of a man who has seen how quickly political landscapes can shift when new information enters the calculations of ambitious lords. The response from each recipient reveals the careful thought that Tywin has invested in his selection of confidants, because their reactions follow patterns that he has predicted with the precision of a master strategist who understands that managing information requires understanding the motivations and limitations of those who receive it. Some see opportunity in supporting a Targaryen claimant whose northern upbringing and Lannister protection might offer stability that pure Targaryen restoration could not provide. Others recognize the potential for manipulation and control that comes with backing a claimant whose legitimacy flows through their recognition rather than through independent power. Lord Roose Bolton, reading his message in the solar of the Dreadfort, while his bastard Ramsay sharpens knives with disturbing enthusiasm, appreciates the elegant simplicity of Tywin's approach to what could have become an uncontrollable crisis. The transformation of dangerous information into managed revelation appeals to his own preference for subtle manipulation over direct confrontation, though he notes with professional interest how the Lannister Lord has positioned himself to benefit regardless of whether the revelation succeeds or fails in its apparent objectives. The boy remains ignorant of his true parentage, Bolton observes to his maester, who nods with the careful neutrality that has kept him alive through his lord's various schemes and betrayals, which means his reactions will be genuine when the truth emerges, making him either a more valuable ally or a more dangerous enemy, depending on how skillfully the revelation is managed. The calculation appeals to Bolton's appreciation for long-term strategy that accounts for multiple possible outcomes while maintaining advantages, regardless of which scenario ultimately unfolds. In King's Landing, where the Iron Throne sits empty while political maneuvering determines who will next claim the right to rule from that uncomfortable seat of power, the whispers begin to spread through channels that Tywin has carefully prepared through years of cultivating sources and managing information flows. The revelation does not arrive as shocking news, but as confirmation of suspicions that certain individuals have harbored, making its acceptance easier, while simultaneously making those who embrace it feel clever rather than manipulated. Lord Varys, whose network of little birds extends throughout the Seven Kingdoms, receives confirmation of intelligence that his own sources have suggested but never quite verified, and he appreciates the masterful way that Tywin has transformed potentially destabilizing informations into an asset that serves multiple purposes simultaneously. The Spider understands that the game has entered a new phase where traditional alliances and enmities must be reevaluated in light of possibilities that seemed impossible mere days earlier. The realm requires stability above all else, Varys murmurs to himself in his chambers beneath the Red Keep, surrounded by the maps and correspondence that track the movement of power throughout Westeros. A Targaryen heir raised in the north and protected by the Lannisters offers that stability in ways that pure restoration or continued usurpation cannot provide. His words acknowledge the brilliance of Tywin's strategy while recognizing the dangers inherent in any plan that seeks to control forces as unpredictable as royal bloodlines and ancient loyalties. The responses begin to arrive at Casterly Rock within a fortnight, carried by ravens whose black wings trace the acceptance or rejection of Tywin's carefully orchestrated revelation across the political map of the Seven Kingdoms. Each reply reveals not just the recipient's decision, but their understanding of the stakes involved, because supporting Jon Snow's claim requires accepting Lannister management of Targaryen restoration, while opposing it means fighting both Northern loyalty and Western gold in a conflict that could drag on for years without clear resolution. Some lords embrace the opportunity to back a claimant whose legitimacy seems both unquestionable and manageable, recognizing that Jon Snow's northern upbringing makes him more palatable than previous Targaryen claimants, while his bastard status keeps him dependent on their continued support for maintaining his positions. Others see the manipulation clearly, but choose to participate anyway, calculating that the benefits of early support outweigh the risks of eventual discovery or betrayal. The careful revelation has achieved its primary purpose of transforming dangerous information into controlled intelligence, but the responses reveal complications that even Tywin's strategic brilliance cannot entirely predict or manage. Lords who accept the revelation begin to maneuver for advantageous positions in the new political order, while those who reject it start to coordinate resistance that could prove more effective than scattered opposition to an uncontrolled disclosure. In the north, where winter winds carry whispers of change alongside the promise of snow, the political landscape begins to shift as lords process the implications of a revelation that affects not just succession, but the nature of their relationship with the Iron Throne and its current occupants. The bastard they have known as Jon Snow remains unaware of the discussions that swirl around his true identity, but the careful positioning of northern houses suggests that his transformation from bastard to prince has already begun. In the minds of those whose support will determine whether that transformation succeeds or fails catastrophically. As spring approaches and the political maneuvering intensifies, Tywin receives reports that confirm his assessment of the revelation's reception, while simultaneously revealing the complexity of forces that his careful disclosure has set in motion throughout the realm. The game has entered a new phase where information warfare replaces open conflict. But the stakes remain as high as ever, because controlling the narrative around Jon Snow's parentage means controlling the future of Targaryen restoration and the stability of the Seven Kingdoms themselves. The bastard of Winterfell stands unknowing at the center of machinations, that will either elevate him to unprecedented heights or destroy him completely. While the lords who hold his fate in their hands continue their careful dance of alliance and betrayal, each seeking advantage in a game where the rules change faster than the pieces can be moved into position. The summons arrives at Winterfell on a gray morning when frost still clings to the battlements, and Ned Stark's breath mists in the cold air of his solar. Maester Luwin delivers the message with hands that betray the slightest tremor, though whether from age or the weight of its contents remains unclear. The seal bears the hand's pin rather than the direwolf of Stark, a detail that speaks volumes about the formality Tywin wishes to maintain even as he orchestrates revelations that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms. Jon Snow stands in the practice yard when his father calls for him, his sword work fluid and precise despite the early hour. The bastard has grown into his name and his blade both, carrying himself with the unconscious dignity of highborn blood, even as he remains unaware of its true source. Robb exchanges glances with Theon Greyjoy as their half-brother sets aside his practice sword and follows the summons, neither understanding that they witness the last moments of Jon Snow's life as they have known it. The solar feels smaller with 3 men inside it, though Ned has chosen the space deliberately for its isolation from curious ears. Maester Luwin takes his place by the window, his presence serving as both witness and counsel, while Ned struggles with words that have remained unspoken for 16 years. Jon settles into the chair across from his father with the easy familiarity of a son, though the formal manner of the summons has planted seeds of unease in his dark eyes. "You know that I have always loved you as a son," Ned begins, his voice carrying the weight of a confession that has shaped every interaction between them since Jon drew his first breath in the world. The bastard nods, confusion deepening in his expression, because the statement sounds like farewell rather than affirmation. "What I am about to tell you will change everything you believe about yourself and your place in this world." The revelation unfolds slowly, carefully, as Ned recounts the events at the Tower of Joy, with the precision of a man who has rehearsed these words in his mind countless times but never spoken them aloud. Jon's face transforms as the truth emerges, shifting from confusion to disbelief, to a kind of numb acceptance that speaks to the resilience bred into Stark bones. When Ned speaks Lyanna's name and the promise she extracted with her dying breath, Jon's hands tighten on the arms of his chair until his knuckles show white against the wood. "Rhaegar Targaryen was your father," Ned says finally, the words falling into silence like stones dropped into still water. "You are the legitimate son of the Crown Prince, born of love and marriage in the sight of the old gods and the new. Your name is not Snow, it never was." The young man who has carried the bastard's burden for 16 years sits motionless as the weight of true parentage settles upon his shoulders. Maester Luwin moves quietly to pour wine, understanding that revelations of this magnitude require both time and strong drink to properly absorb. Jon accepts the cup without seeming to notice it, his gaze fixed on some point beyond the solar's walls, where his entire understanding of himself has crumbled and must now be rebuilt from entirely different materials. "Lord Tywin knows," Ned continues, his voice growing rougher with each word. "He has known for months, gathering proof and building alliances, while we remained in ignorance of his knowledge. The game has already begun, and you stand at its center whether you choose to play or not." Jon finally speaks, his voice hollow with the echo of dreams that must now be abandoned. "I am not your son." The statement hangs between them like a blade, cutting through years of shared moments and quiet affection with the brutal efficiency of revealed truth. "You are my blood," Ned replies firmly, leaning forward in his chair to close the distance between them. "You are my nephew, Lyanna's boy, raised as my own because she begged me to protect you from Robert's hatred and the realm's hunger for Targaryen blood." Nothing changes the love I bear you, Jon. Nothing changes your place in this family. But everything has changed, and all three men in the Solar understand this. Even as Ned speaks the words of comfort, Jon Snow, the bastard, could dream of earning his place through service and honor, could find purpose in the Night's Watch or in service to his father's house. Jon Targaryen faces choices that carry the weight of kingdoms, bears a name that men have died to defend or destroy, inherits a legacy written in blood and fire across 3 centuries of rule. The wine remains untouched in Jon's hands as Maester Luwin approaches with a leather satchel containing documents that Tywin has shared through careful channels. Birth records in High Valyrian, witness statements from those who served at the Tower of Joy, genealogical charts that trace the Targaryen bloodline through its various branches and marriages. The evidence spreads across Ned's desk, like pieces of a puzzle that reveals a picture none of them truly wished to see complete. "What does Lord Tywin want from me?" Jon asks, his tactical mind already beginning to function despite the emotional upheaval. The question demonstrates the kind of clear thinking that marks him as his father's son, regardless of which father shaped his blood, cutting through sentiment to identify the practical realities that will determine his survival. Ned exchanges glances with Maester Luwin before answering with the blunt honesty that has defined their relationship. He wants to use you. Your blood makes you valuable to those who would restore the Targaryens and dangerous to those who would see them extinct forever. Tywin positions himself to benefit, regardless of which high faction ultimately prevails. The political calculations begin to unfold as Jon processes the implications of his revealed heritage. Houses that have shown quiet support for Targaryen restoration will see him as legitimacy made flesh, while those committed to Baratheon rule will view him as a threat requiring elimination. The revelation transforms every interaction he has had with lords and ladies throughout the realm, recontextualizing their courtesy or coldness through the lens of political calculation rather than simple bastard prejudice. The Queen suspects, Ned continues, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, sees hatred of anything Targaryen runs deeper than her love for her own children. If she confirms what Tywin already knows, Robert will not protect you regardless of our friendship. Jon sets the wine aside untouched and rises from his chair, moving to the window where he can see the practice yard below. Bran swings a sword that still seems too large for his small hands, while Arya watches from the shadows, her own blade hidden beneath her cloak. The sight of his siblings pursuing their training with innocent dedication to skills they may soon need for survival adds weight to decisions that feel impossibly heavy for shoulders that have carried only the bastard's burden until this moment. "How long do we have?" he asks, without turning from the window, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he contemplates. The question reveals his understanding that revelation of this nature creates momentum that cannot be controlled or contained, forcing action upon all parties regardless of their preferences. Maester Luwin consults the correspondence that arrived with Tywin's latest communique, his fingers tracing lines of carefully coded intelligence that speak to the Old Lion's extensive network of informants. Days, perhaps weeks before whispers become open discussion. Lord Tywin suggests that controlled revelation serves better than discovery by our enemies. The truth of this assessment settles upon Jon like armor that fits too well, protecting him while simultaneously restricting his movement in ways he has not yet learned to navigate. The bastard's freedom to choose his own path dies in this Solar, replaced by the prince's burden of carrying the expectations and fears of an entire realm upon shoulders that have known only the weight of personal honor until this transformative morning. Outside the window, ravens take flight from Winterfell's rookery, carrying messages to allies and enemies alike. As the machinery of political maneuvering accelerates, beyond the point where any single decision can halt its inexorable progress. Jon watches their black wings disappear into gray skies while contemplating the flight that his own life has taken from the simple certainty of bastard's existence into the complex uncertainties of royal blood, knowing that each moment of delay brings them closer to the point where revelation becomes inevitable rather than strategic. Tywin's letter speaks of preparation rather than postponement, outlining the careful choreography required to transform whispered suspicions into accepted truth without triggering the kind of violent reaction that destroyed the Targaryens a generation ago. The Great Hall of Winterfell fills with representatives from houses across the north, as Ned calls his bannermen to hear news of great import to the realm. Lord Umber arrives with his characteristic bluster, demanding to know why urgent summons interrupt the harvest season, while Lord Karstark maintains the careful silence of a man who suspects momentous changes approach, but lacks the details to position himself advantageously. Maester Luwin moves between the assembled lords with scrolls and sealed letters, each document another piece of Tywin's carefully constructed revelation designed to control the narrative bare before their enemies can shape it to their advantage. The realm stands at a crossroads. Ned begins, his voice carrying the weight of decisions that will reshape the political landscape of Westeros. Truth long hidden must be brought to light, not through the whispers of our enemies, but through the honor of those who value stability above personal gain. The words echo Tywin's strategic thinking, presenting revelation as strength rather than vulnerability, forcing the assembled lords to consider loyalty to truth rather than reaction to surprise. Lord Manderly shifts in his seat, his merchant's instincts recognizing the careful preparation behind these revelations. What truth requires such elaborate presentation, Lord Stark? Surely honesty needs no such staging. His questions probe the theatrical nature of the moment, while simultaneously acknowledging the political necessity that drives it, understanding that some truths demand careful handling to avoid the chaos that follows poorly managed disclosure. Jon stands before the assembled lords with Longclaw at his side, the Valyrian steel a tangible reminder of the legacy that flows through his veins, regardless of the name he has carried throughout his youth. "I am not Ned Stark's bastard," he declares, his voice steady despite the magnitude of words that will reshape every relationship in his life. "I am Jon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, raised in honor by the man who saved my life when kings and kingdoms sought my death." The silence that follows stretches like a bowstring pulled to its breaking point, each lord calculating the implications of this revelation for their own houses and allegiances. Lord Glover's hand moves instinctively toward his sword hilt before stopping, recognizing that violence serves no purpose when faced with truth that must be confronted rather than denied. The political mathematics of the moment demand careful consideration rather than immediate reaction, forcing rational calculation over emotional response. Hundreds of leagues to the south, Tywin Lannister receives word that the Northern Revelation proceeds according to plan, his network of informants confirming that Ned Stark's presentation maintains the careful balance between disclosure and stability. The Old Lion's satisfaction stems not from the revelation itself, but from its controlled nature, proving that even the most dangerous truths can be weaponized when properly managed. His correspondence with King's Landing increases as Robert Baratheon faces the crisis that will define his reign and test every alliance that has sustained his rule. "The boy lives," Varys whispers to Littlefinger in the corridors of the Red Keep, his words carrying implications that reach far beyond simple survival. More importantly, he lives with the support of houses that can no longer be dismissed or ignored. The Spider's intelligence network maps the shifting loyalties that follow Jon's revelation, tracking which lords see opportunity in supporting a Targaryen restoration and which view such support as treason, requiring immediate response. Robert's rage fills the throne room when the news reaches King's Landing through channels that Tywin cannot control, his roar echoing off ancient walls that have witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties. Ned swore the boy was his, swore it on his honor. The king's fury targets his closest friend's deception while grappling with the impossible choice between personal loyalty and the hatred that has defined his rule since claiming the Iron Throne from the dragons he thought he had destroyed. Tyrion observes his father's machinations with the appreciation of one who understands the elegance of turning potential disaster into political advantage. "You've transformed a hidden threat into a managed asset," he remarks during their private conference, recognizing how revelation under controlled circumstances serves Lannister interests better than discovery by hostile forces. The dwarf's mind works through the implications, seeing how Jon's acknowledgement creates new possibilities for alliance, while simultaneously fracturing existing power structures in ways that benefit those prepared to exploit the chaos. The Northern Lords debate long into the night, their arguments revealing the fundamental divide between those who see opportunity in supporting a Targaryen heir and those who view such support as betrayal of Robert's reign. Lord Umber's voice carries above the others as he declares his willingness to follow Jon regardless of his parentage, citing the character revealed through years of observation rather than the politics of bloodlines. His support triggers similar declarations from houses that value proven leadership over abstract claims, building momentum behind Jon's cause through personal loyalty rather than political calculation. Ravens fly between castles as news spreads beyond the North's borders, carrying word to houses throughout the Seven Kingdoms that must now choose sides in a conflict that many hoped had ended with Robert's rebellion. The Reach stirs as House Tyrell calculates the advantages of supporting a Targaryen's restoration, while Dorne's long-held grievances against the current regime make their eventual alignment almost inevitable. Each house faces the same impossible choice between stability under Robert's rule and change under dragon banners that once again cast shadows across the realm. Jon finds himself at the center of a storm that transforms him from bastard to prince, while simultaneously making him the focal point for every ambition and grievance in Westeros. The weight of expectation settles upon his shoulders like chainmail, each link representing another house, another oath, another life that depends upon decisions he has yet to learn how to make. His transformation from Snow to Targaryen brings power he never sought while stripping away the anonymity that allowed him to forge his own path through the world. Catelyn watches these developments with emotions that war between vindication and terror, seeing her long-held suspicions confirmed while recognizing the danger that such confirmation brings to her own family. "The boy was never the threat," she whispers to Ned during their private moments, understanding too late that hiding Jon's identity protected everyone while revelation endangers all who participated in the deception. Her fears prove prescient as word arrives from King's Landing that Robert's rage extends beyond Jon to encompass every Stark who aided in concealing the truth. The Game of Thrones reshapes itself around Jon's revelation as players who thought their positions secure discover that hidden princes change every calculation. Stannis Baratheon receives word at Dragonstone with the grim satisfaction of one who sees duty clearly defined, recognizing that supporting his brother's claim requires opposing Targaryen restoration, regardless of personal feelings about the boy's character. His naval preparations take on new urgency as the prospect of civil war transforms from distant possibility to immediate necessity, forcing decisions that will determine whether the realm bleeds or bends to accommodate this resurrection of dragon claims. The political landscape fractures along lines that reveal the fundamental instabilities beneath Robert's reign. As lords who accepted Baratheon rule out of necessity rather than conviction, see opportunity in supporting a restoration that promises to reward early supporters. Jon's royal blood becomes the catalyst that transforms simmering discontent into open rebellion, proving Tywin's calculation that controlled revelation serves strategic interests as better than allowing enemies to shape the narrative according to their own calculations. Though even the Lion of Casterly Rock cannot fully predict how swiftly the realm reorganizes itself around this new axis of power. The Solar at Winterfell becomes the epicenter of frantic correspondence as ravens carry messages throughout the north, each bearing Ned Stark's seal and careful explanations that balance truth with political necessity. His letters acknowledge Jon's parentage while emphasizing the boy's northern upbringing and Stark loyalties, a delicate construction designed to preserve family honor while navigating the treacherous currents of royal revelation. Catelyn watches her husband compose these missives with growing unease, recognizing that each word commits their house further to a path where retreat becomes impossible. The boy will need protection beyond what Winterfell can provide, she tells Ned as he sets down his quill, the weight of their situation settling between them like winter fog. Robert's anger makes enemies of friends and allies of strangers. Ned's response carries the weariness of a man who sees honor and survival pulling in opposite directions. Jon's safety depends upon showing strength, not hiding behind castle walls. The realm must see him as worthy of his blood, not merely a bastard elevated by political convenience. Meanwhile, in the capital, Tywin's maneuvering reaches its culmination as he meets privately with key supporters, each conversation carefully calibrated to demonstrate how supporting Jon's legitimacy serves immediate interests rather than abstract principles of succession. His discussion with Lord Mace Tyrell proves particularly illuminating, as the Reach Lord's ambitions align perfectly with opportunities created by Targaryen restoration. The boy has northern steel and southern cunning, Tywin observes during their private audience. More importantly, he lacks the madness that plagued his grandfather and the weakness that doomed his father. A ruler shaped by both ice and fire might prove exactly what this realm requires. Tyrell's agreement comes wrapped in calculations about his daughter's future and the Reach's position in any new order. These conversations repeat throughout King's Landing as lords who initially recoiled from supporting Targaryen claims discover that their objections dissolve when presented with concrete advantages and guaranteed positions under Jon's eventual rule. The transformation occurs with startling rapidity as initial shock gives way to pragmatic acceptance among those who recognize that successful rebellions become legitimate governments. Jon himself seems almost bewildered by the speed with which his world changes, moving through Winterfell's halls with the careful bearing of someone learning to inhabit a role that extends far beyond personal identity into the realm of political symbolism. His conversations with Maester Luwin reveal the depth of preparation required for the responsibilities thrust upon him. The old man's lessons shift from basic literacy to complex matters of statecraft, taxation, and military organization as Jon's education accelerates to match his circumstances. Power requires understanding its sources and limitations. Luwin explains during one such session, his voice carrying the patient authority of someone who has guided lords through similar transformations. Your blood grants legitimacy, but legitimacy alone cannot govern kingdoms or command armies. The network of support that coalesces around Jon demonstrates how quickly political landscapes can shift when fundamental assumptions change. Northern lords who swore loyalty to House Stark find themselves supporting a Targaryen prince, while southern houses that opposed Robert's rebellion discover opportunities in backing Targaryen restoration. These realignments occur through countless private meetings, sealed letters, and whispered conversations that gradually reshape the realm's power structure. Tyrion Lannister's role proves crucial in managing these delicate negotiations, his wit and political acumen helping to navigate conflicts between traditional enemies who must now function as allies. His meetings with various lords combine humor with hard truths about the realities of supporting Jon's claim. We face a choice between supporting a bastard who acts like a prince or maintaining loyalty to a king who increasingly behaves like a tyrant, he tells one gathering of uncertain lords. The decision seems rather straightforward when presented in such terms. The resolution comes not through dramatic battles or grand gestures, but through the gradual accumulation of support that makes opposition seem futile rather than heroic. Robert's initial rage exhausts itself against the growing consensus that Jon's revelation represents opportunity rather than crisis, leaving the king isolated among courtiers who increasingly see their future prosperity tied to accepting rather than opposing the change. The final transformation occurs during a great feast at Winterfell, where Jon officially receives recognition from assembled northern lords, their formal acknowledgement creating precedent that southern houses soon follow. The ceremony itself seems almost anticlimactic after months of political maneuvering, yet its significance resonates throughout the realm as a moment when hidden dragons emerge into sunlight, and the Game of Thrones reveals new players whose moves reshape every other calculation. In the aftermath, as autumn settles over Westeros with unusual gentleness, Jon Snow, now Jon Targaryen, walks the battlements of Winterfell with the measured pace of someone learning to balance northern loyalty with royal
responsibility.
The realm stretches before him not as conquest to be claimed, but as inheritance to be earned through wisdom rather than warfare. Tywin's letters to Casterly Rock carry quiet satisfaction as he reports that his gamble has succeeded beyond even his calculations, creating not merely political advantage but genuine stability built upon consensus rather than fear. The Old Lion's final moves in the Game of Thrones demonstrate that victory sometimes comes through revealing truth at precisely the right moment, rather than concealing it indefinitely. The dragon's shadow falls across Westeros not as darkness, but as the promise of synthesis between ice and fire, northern honor and southern ambition, creating possibilities that seemed impossible when winter first threatened, and hidden princes remained safely hidden in shadows that no longer provide adequate shelter from the light of political necessity transformed into opportunity.